People of the internet, Retro here, and today we're covering 27 things you need to know before buying a Nintendo Switch 2. Whether you're a die-hard Nintendo fan or just curious about what this new system offers, I've got you covered with everything you need to know before deciding if it's worth your hard-earned cash. We're talking hardware specs, controller improvements, game compatibility, online features, and more. First things first though, and that is the price tag, and I have to say your wallet is definitely gonna feel this one. The base Nintendo Switch 2 will set you back $450. If you're at all interested in Mario Kart World, however, you'll definitely want to consider the bundle that includes the game. This one retails for $500. One interesting note about the prices here is they actually could have been even higher and could be higher in the future. Nintendo previously delayed pre-orders in the US due to the ongoing tariff situation and considered raising the base price of the console. For now, they've decided against that, but in a highly unstable global market, this could definitely change in the future. Microsoft, for example, actually just increased the price of the Xbox Series family of consoles, and there are rumors Sony may have to follow suit as well with PS5 and PS5 Pro. Now, is the Switch 2 worth that $450 price tag? Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you're getting for that investment and if buying a Switch 2 is right for you. So how is Nintendo attempting to justify the Switch 2's asking price? First off, more power. Now, it isn't going to rival a PS5 or Xbox Series X in terms of power, but the Switch 2 should be a significant leap over the original. It features a custom NVIDIA chipset that delivers roughly 10 times the GPU performance of the original Switch. Not only that, this bump in power will also bring 4K gaming to a Nintendo console for the first time, at least when your system is in docked mode. When connected to your TV, the Switch 2 can output games at up to 4K resolution running at 60 frames per second, or 1080p at a buttery smooth 120 FPS. On the handheld side of things, there are still plenty of upgrades there as well, but also one significant downgrade, that is, if you're coming from a Switch OLED. We'll start with the improvements though, and one significant improvement is that the Switch 2 screen is now a 1080p display. It even supports HDR and a 120Hz refresh rate. We even get VRR here, which is a very welcome addition. This will eliminate screen tearing and stuttering, delivering smoother, more fluid visuals, even during intense gameplay with fluctuating frame rates. The screen also gets a nice bump in size to 7.9 inches compared to the 7-inch on the OLED model and 6.2 inches on the original Switch. Unfortunately, this does lead us to the one big downside, and that's that the Switch 2 will launch with an LCD screen and not an OLED panel. Of course, this was almost certainly a decision to try and keep the cost of the system from being even more expensive. On the positive side, those who have had a chance to go hands-on with the new system report that the display is vibrant, sharp, and really pops in HDR. Of course, no LCD panel will be able to come close to the rich, inky blacks that you get on an OLED screen. Now, one other big benefit on Switch 2 will be faster internal storage. The Nintendo Switch 2 storage capacity sees a massive jump with 256 gigabytes of internal UFS storage compared to the original's 32 gigabytes of eMMC storage. UFS is significantly faster than eMMC storage, so the system should feel much snappier and responsive overall, and of course games should load even faster. Fortunately, you'll still be able to add even more storage to your Switch 2 by taking advantage of its micro SD express slot. You can add up to 2 terabytes of additional storage for all your game downloads. It's very important to note here that the Switch 2 only supports micro SD express cards, so if you had a standard micro SD card in your original Switch, you won't be able to use the same one here. Nintendo also makes it clear that attempting to use a micro SD card previously used on a Switch 1 will not allow you to save or load digital games or save data. So if you want to expand the storage on your Switch 2 system, you'll need to look specifically at micro SD express cards. Moving on to number 7, and I'm happy to report that Nintendo is embracing modern wireless standards with the Switch 2. The new system includes Wi-Fi 6 support for lightning-fast downloads and reduced latency during online play. The improved Bluetooth also means better wireless performance for your controllers and audio devices. And speaking of audio devices, the Switch 2 features newly designed independent stereo speaker enclosures that deliver richer, more immersive sound when playing in handheld mode. There's also a built-in microphone with noise and echo cancellation for voice chat. As for other connectivity options, the Switch 2 now has 2 USB-C ports, one on the bottom for charging and docking, and one on the top for accessories. This is a small change, but it should add some much-needed flexibility here, especially for handheld and tabletop play. Now for some slightly disappointing news, despite all these upgrades, battery life remains similar to the original Switch, ranging from 2 to 6.5 hours depending on the game you're playing. So you'll still want to keep a charger or battery pack handy for any long gaming sessions when you're away from the dock. Even though the Switch 2 looks very similar to the original, one of the biggest differences is how the new Joy-Cons connect. Nintendo certainly revolutionized the handheld market with the Switch 1. They had a portable system here that could also dock as a home console. Now, a big part of this were the sliding rail Joy-Cons, and while a solid idea in theory, many Switch 1 owners were plagued by Joy-Con issues over time. The Joy-Con 2 controllers are attempting to solve this wear and tear issue with a new attachment mechanism. Rather than sliding rails, the new Joy-Cons will attach magnetically to the Switch 2. This should provide a stronger, more secure grip. They're also easier to attach and remove thanks to a release button on the back. This should result in a console that feels more premium overall and hopefully one that will hold up better over time without those sliding rails. The new Joy-Con controllers are also about a half-inch longer than the originals to fit with the new larger system. Now, depending on your hand size, this could be a good or bad change for you. Chances are, if you felt the original Joy-Cons were slightly too small, then you'll be happy with this change. But if you were someone who thought the original was perfect, then the new size could take some getting used to. Unfortunately, we still don't know how well Nintendo addressed what was by far the biggest issue with the original Joy-Cons: stick drift. Almost every Switch owner I know suffered from this at one point or another, and I personally had to send a few Joy-Cons back to Nintendo for repair. Many fans had hoped the Switch 2 would use Hall effect analog sticks, which are known to greatly reduce stick drift. That is not the case here though, and only time will tell how well the new Joy-Cons hold up. I have to say, one of the coolest innovations with the Joy-Cons is the new mouse mode. They now include edge sensors that allow for mouse-like control in supported games. This opens up so many new possibilities for strategy games, point-and-click adventures, of course shooters, and more. It's also a seamless transition that happens instantly with no setup or configuring in the menus. You simply place the Joy-Con down on a flat surface and start moving as you would with a mouse. The game will detect this change almost instantly, and it works the same way when you reattach back to the console. Another nice improvement on the new Joy-Cons is that Nintendo has upgraded their already impressive haptic feedback system with HD Rumble 2. This upgrade should offer more precise and immersive feedback than the original, making it possible to quite literally feel the difference between walking on various surfaces such as grass, sand, or stone. Another added benefit is that these new Joy-Cons can produce surprisingly loud and clear sounds through vibrations, making it easier to locate lost controllers using the Search for Controllers feature. At the same time, HD Rumble 2 should be even quieter for gameplay to reduce noise while still keeping you immersed in the game with the force feedback. The right Joy-Con 2 also features a new dedicated C button that gives you quick access to game chat. It's a small addition that adds a nice convenience for those who frequently use the voice chat option. This game chat feature will be free for all Switch 2 owners for the first 10 months. After March 31st, 2026, however, this feature will only be available to paying Nintendo Switch Online members. So at that point, this dedicated button will largely become useless if you don't pay for Nintendo's subscription. Now, personally, at only $50 per year, I think Nintendo Online is well worth it considering all the games you have access to thanks to the expansion pack. At the same time, it is unfortunate to see the game chat feature locked behind this paywall. At some point, there are going to be many Switch 2 owners who don't even have a use for that button. Now, if you're someone who already has a handful of Switch 1 accessories lying around, I have good news for you. Your original Switch 1 controllers, both Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller, will still work with the Switch 2 via Bluetooth. Now, of course, the old Joy-Cons won't be able to physically attach to the Switch 2 thanks to its new magnetic attachment mechanism. So these old accessories will be best used when you're playing your Switch 2 in tabletop or docked mode. Of course, even though the old controllers will work, Nintendo is also set to release an updated Pro Controller for the Switch 2. This controller will release alongside the system in retail for $85. It features a high-quality gamepad designed for the Switch 2, but it comes with a very similar form factor compared to the original Pro Controller. One difference on this controller is the inclusion of the new C button for easy access to game chat, as well as a 3.5mm audio jack for those who want to connect their wired headphones. This new controller will also come packed with the updated HD Rumble 2 technology, but I think the standout feature here has to be the new customizable back buttons. These new buttons, labeled GL and GR, will let players reassign controls for each game. For years now, this has been a feature reserved only for the most premium controllers, such as those made by SCUF, as well as the Xbox and PlayStation Pro controllers. And lastly, the Switch 2 Pro controller will also have an outstanding 80-hour battery life. Now for number 18 here, we have what I think is one of the best features of the Switch 2. Nintendo has confirmed the new system will be backward compatible with the vast majority of Switch 1 games, both physical and digital. So it's great to see your existing library won't go to waste. Some old titles will even include free updates that make those games run better on the new system. Now notice before I said the vast majority of games should work fine, but there are some that could have issues. Some legacy games with unique control schemes or hardware requirements like Nintendo Labo won't function on the Switch 2. Nintendo does have an official compatibility list on their website, so I'll include a link to that in the video description. Be sure and check that before making your purchase decision, especially if there are some specific Switch 1 games that you're concerned about. So when Nintendo announced the Switch 2, they said it would support 3 different types of games. First, there's the backward compatible games we just discussed. Second, there are also dedicated Switch 2 games built from the ground up for the new console. These will be exclusive to Switch 2 and come on new distinct red game cards that support faster data read speeds. Nintendo also announced what they're referring to as Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. These are ports of Switch 1 games with new features such as graphics and performance upgrades. On some games, it even includes brand new content or totally new modes not included in the original. These games will also include an upgrade path for anyone who owns the original game on the Nintendo Switch. The cost of each upgrade will vary based on the game and how much is included. Oh, and if you have a physical copy of the original game, you'll want to make sure you keep that because you'll still need it to play the upgraded version. Nintendo will also have a system transfer tool so you can move your digital games, saves, and profile from your original Switch to the Switch 2. You can transfer everything over by connecting both consoles or by sending your data to a Nintendo server. This will copy over your game progress from the vast majority of games. However, some games like Animal Crossing will be removed from the old Switch. This next one here is a big deal for multiplayer fans, and that's the inclusion of GameShare on the Nintendo Switch 2. This feature lets players share multiplayer games with friends, so only one person needs to own the game and up to 4 people can play together. Using a Switch 2, you can share games locally via wireless with both Switch 2 and original Switch consoles. Now, even though Switch 1 owners can play, they cannot initiate that initial share. That has to come from the Switch 2. Games like Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario Party Jamboree are supported, with more titles expected to be added later. There's also an online option here where you can share with other Switch 2 systems through the new console's Game Chat feature. This will work with that 10-month trial of Game Chat, but after March 31st, 2026, you'll need a Switch Online membership if you want to use that option. Now, while this is great for multiplayer games, what about other titles where you want to share with friends and family? For this, Nintendo Switch 2 will support virtual game cards, which will allow you to share digital games within your Nintendo family group. Games downloaded from the eShop will show up as virtual game cards. So then if you have multiple Switch 2 consoles, you can eject a virtual game card from one system and then load it onto a second system. This does require an internet connection to perform, plus you'll need a local connection when pairing the two consoles for the first time. But if you plan on having multiple Switch 2 consoles in your household, this could save you hundreds of dollars on duplicate game purchases. It is important to note this means you can only have the game active on one system at a time. So if you want to play on the source Switch 2 again, you'll have to eject the virtual game card from the second Switch 2 and then load it again on the first. Basically, think of it as just like a physical game, but something that you manage digitally instead. There's also a web-based version of this as well. So if you're a parent traveling with your kids and they want to play a game that's actually tied to your Switch account, you don't even need that Switch with you. You can log onto the website, eject the virtual game card, and then load it into their Switch instead. Here's another interesting detail about the Switch 2. Nintendo is also introducing game key cards. These look virtually identical to regular game cards, but there's one key difference here. They actually contain a key to download a game instead of the actual game itself. Now, these have proven quite controversial among fans, but the good news here is that unlike regular digital purchases, you can actually loan, trade in, or even resell game key cards. They are not tied to your Nintendo account. The first time you insert the card, you'll need an internet connection to download the game, but once you download it, you will not need to connect anymore. Now, don't think this means you can just toss that physical card, because you'll absolutely still need it to play the game. It will act as your physical key each time you want to play the game. So even though the game will be downloaded digitally to your Switch 2, you won't be able to play without the game key card loaded into the game slot each time. Unfortunately, the days of $60 first-party Nintendo games appear to be over. Most new first-party titles for the Switch 2 will cost between $70 and even $80 in the case of Mario Kart World. The jump to $70 titles certainly matches current industry standards, but the jump to $80 on some games caught many fans off guard. Nintendo does seem to be serious about what it's referring to as a variable pricing strategy for Switch 2 games. So even though Mario Kart will launch at $80, Donkey Kong Bonanza, another first-party title, will release for $70. Other third-party titles are also exploring this variable pricing, with Cyberpunk 2077 launching at $70, Hogwarts Legacy at $60, and Split Fiction at $50. It's not just the game prices you need to know about though. Switch 2 accessories won't come cheap either. An extra pair of Joy-Con 2 controllers will set you back $95, with the Pro controller coming in at $85. If you want a second Switch 2 dock, that will set you back a whopping $120. Here's a quick look at all of the official accessory pricing that we have directly from Nintendo. Of course, you won't be limited just to buying these from Nintendo, as numerous third parties are hard at work on designing their own accessories. In many cases, these are going to be even cheaper than Nintendo's first-party offerings. I've saved one of my favorite details for last, and that's the return of classic Nintendo GameCube titles. If you subscribe to the expansion pack tier of Nintendo Switch Online, you'll now get access to classic classic GameCube titles on the Switch 2. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur 2 are the titles you can expect at launch. More games like Super Mario Sunshine and Luigi's Mansion are on the way as well. Now, if you at all found this video helpful in trying to decide whether or not you should buy a Switch 2, then be sure to hit that like button before you go, and let me know in the comments if you're planning to pick one up. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.